Welcome to the Trick Play Podcast. The full podcast is available on both YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yeah. What do we...
I can sit here.
Yeah, you can sit here. Alrighty. Hello! Oh, wait, no. I started going and then I wasn't ready. I misclicked. There we go, now I'm ready. Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast. I'm Simon Szyszkowski here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we'll be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about this week. We pretty much hit on every sport, I think, except the MLB. We started off in the NHL, where we talked about the Jacob Markstrom trade that just went through earlier this week, as well as the Kemper and Dubois trade. So this was just a very tradey week. Oh, there we go. We got the subscribe thing on the screen. Make sure to do that as well, as we're trying to hit 100 subscribers. Woo! Go subscribe to the YouTube. If you're an audio listener, shout out to you. But also come over to the YouTube, check that out, because we're trying to get to 100. We're trying to get to 100. We move over to the NFL, where we talked about the 5 most overrated teams in both of our opinions, just because we like pissing people off. Like Caleb. Jesus Christ. And then we talked about the NBA Finals. I can't do this fucking intro while you're sitting there doing I don't even know what to call it other than the Disney face. That is what I'd call that. It's like the Disney sellout face. That's what I imagine. That's the face after Trick Play gets sold to.
So, a couple days, or this is just yesterday as of recording this, this is a move that Flames fans have been waiting for a long time. We've been talking about this since the trade deadline, and from before even that. Jacob Markstrom has been traded to the team that we all expected him to be traded to, the New Jersey Devils. Full details of the trade, so New Jersey just gets Markstrom in return. Maybe not necessarily what Flames fans were fully hoping for, but still not a bad return. They get defenseman Kevin Ball, first round pick in 2025, so next year. And they also will retain about a little bit more than 30% of Markstrom's salary. So I won't give it any more intro than that. We already pretty much know the context, because if you've been following this podcast, because we've talked about it 7 separate times in the last.
How long has it been rumored at this point that he'd be going to New Jersey? Is it 6 months?
Oh, I remember. It has to be.
We had a Nond on the first time, and that must have been
6 months.
That would have been January. So yeah, it is. It's probably it's either 6 months exactly or really close to it, because it was a little bit before the trade deadline that all this started getting all over the place. And I think you hit on something right off the jump. It is a little underwhelming considering how long we've been waiting. You'd think that a trade like this would have been able to happen, I guess. I don't understand what the wait was, in a sense. All the Devils needed to trade at this point to get him was a 2025 first and Kevin Ball, which was 2 things that they already had at that point. So it's a little interesting, I guess, in that sense, but it's by no means a bad trade. I think one of the stats that I saw reading on Twitter about it was exactly a comparison based on Jacob Markstrom's age, comparing all of the trades of other goalies. I think is he 34 or 35? Whatever age he is. One of the two. Comparing goalies of that age and what they normally get when being traded away, I think he might be one of, if not the only goalie ever to pull a first-round pick at that age. Which I think, which should say, to a certain point, how good of a job Craig Conroy actually did, despite a lot of people not being very happy about it. But honestly, I'm not too mad. I was scared we weren't going to get a first-round pick at all because of how inconsistent Markstrom had been at times. And considering his pattern was kind of really good season, bad season. Really good season, bad season. And he just had a really good season. Ergo, he's about to have a very bad season. So I thought maybe that might bring down his how much he's worth, but clearly it did, and the Flames are still going to get a first-round pick out of it. And something I might add on as well, because I did see this being talked about, is if the Devils end up struggling this next season and that pick ends up being top 10, the Flames end up getting their 2026 first unprotected. So no matter what, the Flames
Yeah.
are getting a first round pick. And I think that's the important thing. And I don't know, at least to me, I'll throw it back over to you because I don't think you've properly given your opinion on it yet. But I like it a lot. You got rid of a lot of cap with getting Markstrom off the roster. Dustin Wolf's going to get the chance to take that net for himself now. There's not really much standing in his way. And Kevin Ball's a fine top 3 defenseman. Like, he'll slide in decently. He's 6'6", so he's the Flames type, I guess. But other than that, I'm not too mad about it. It's a decent package. It's not too good, not too bad.
Yeah. And I think I would agree with that. I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head right there with everything you just said. I think the biggest thing for me is just it kind of hammers home the disappointment that this couldn't have gotten done at the trade deadline. Because I look at this deal and I think I bet if there was a little bit more urgency, if the Devils were still pushing for the playoffs, then maybe you get a little bit more. Because I look at this and compare this to what I think is Conroy's best deal that he's made so far with the Lindholm deal, and it really just pales in comparison. Because I do think in terms of value to a team, I'm sure Lindholm's quite a decent chunk younger, so that probably helps. But with Lindholm, not only do you get the first round pick, you get like a very good prospect, and then you also get Kuzmenko versus in this deal where you get kind of a middle of the road defenseman and the first round pick that is again, like you said, top 10 protected. Um, I think that I think that it is still a good deal. I'm glad that it got a first round pick for it because I do think, like a lot of articles have pointed out, the Flames had pretty much no leverage in this situation at all, with Markstrom having a no move clause, with everybody basically knowing that he was going to be leaving. Um, they really didn't have, like, they bungled the situation at the trade deadline with him so bad that there was no way he was coming back for this season. So their leverage was all pretty much gone. So considering that, I think they were good to get a first round pick for him. But yeah, no, I think the whole trade, just from both the perspective of could have gotten more, and also I think it hampered his trade value now. I just wish they had gotten it done at the trade deadline when they were very clearly trying to do it in the first place.
Yeah. No, I do agree with you to a sense. I think another reason that a lot of Flames fans are really disappointed about is the rumors that we might be getting the 10th pick. I think the fact that
Yeah.
as great as it is that we got a first round pick, I think a lot of people really wanted that pick because of what it could have meant for this franchise. I mean, there's enough content out there about how deep this draft is, just almost pretty much through the top 15. It's pretty insane with the amount of prospects that are in there. So if we could have gotten what would have been a third first round pick in this draft, that would have been awesome. I think, and especially considering what could have been there, right? Because we would have had 9 and 10 back to back. If you still somehow get a Ginla at that spot, awesome. If you end up choosing to trade up, which is another possibility, and get a Ginla, or you get even somebody else if you can get even further than that, awesome. Like, there's so much. I think the potential of it really, really hurts. But I think what we're quickly kind of learning after this entire thing is I don't think the Flames were ever, going to get Jesus, that number 10 pick. I think that was always kind of a pipe dream a little bit, is the term that I've seen used a little all around. And it sucks. It sucks a lot. I'd like to see if the Flames still try and trade up despite what they ended up getting from Markstrom. I think that's going to be interesting to see in the next little bit here, but who knows? I think at the end of the day, it just shows what the youth movement is going to look like with the Flames. I think this is really the start of hopefully a rebuild. So a lot of people have been saying the word retool, which is scary, which would mean that we're going to trade away all these picks. But I'm a big fan of all that we've stacked.
I seriously doubt that. I think with what Conroy is doing, I saw a big a great Instagram page that I know you know of, is the In the Dome Instagram page.
Yep.
For the Flames, because they have a lot of cool stats that they post up on there, and a lot of the I don't necessarily agree with everything they put up on there, but one of the stats I saw that was super interesting was what Tree Living, the assets that Tree Living moved in and out in his
Yeah.
first however many trades versus what Conroy did. And it was just really interesting because you can clearly see the difference between the rebuild and the retool. Whereas
Yeah.
Conroy is shipping out, is actually like committing to it and shipping out his best players and getting a ton of picks back and getting a lot more assets back than he traded away. With Tree Living, it was very obvious he was just kind of ditching those and trying to get better as fast as he could. And while I think that hastened the process, I don't. And there was still a lot of holes left on the roster. It's why they were never able to
The
get over the hump.
I
I think
I, I think it might
with
have been.
Conroy, he said he's trying to build through the draft, and I think that's going to really help him.
I think the other thing that In the Dome threw on there, I think I saw it from them. But that really adds on to that is how many first round picks Treliving had in his entire tenure. Because I think the Flames have more in the next 2 or 3 years than he had in his entire. I don't know if it was quite 10 years, but it was pretty close to 10-year run with the Flames, which is ridiculous. Like it's ridiculous what
Yeah.
Conroy has already built, and I think you make a really good point there because that actually makes me feel a lot better about it. Thinking about it like that, I think what people are scared of is Conroy's going to get pressure from the ownership group and go, well, time to trade away all these firsts and go bring in like Tarasenko and like Patrick Kane and
Well,
make a run
yeah,
at
but
it.
I think if that pressure was there, I think it would have already been there, and these moves would have never happened.
Yeah, that's a
Because
good point.
like some of them, I don't think you could have prevented. Like I think with how badly you screwed up Markstrom, maybe you're not able to prevent this. But a lot of them, I think you could have been like, "Hey, Chris Tanev, come back," and it probably would have been able to get something done if they really wanted to. Hey, Elias Lindholm, come back. Hey, Noah
Mm.
Hanifin, come back. You know, like I think we would have seen them retain at least one or two of those guys if they were really gonna say like, okay, now let's try and beef up, or we're still good. You know, we still need to sell tickets. I do think the fact that Connor is being allowed to do this and pretty much gut the roster, because now this is all of the tradable pieces that we have are gone now pretty much. I think Markstrom was the last one. And the
Well,
fact that
I
we've been
think the
able to
one
get rid of
the one goofy thing I saw brought up is if you can trade Dubois, I wonder if you can trade Huberdeau, but
absolutely not.
yeah, probably not.
There's no way you can.
Yeah, it's not quite the same deal.
Tradable means tradable, not. Do you talk about pipe dream earlier? I think
Yeah,
that's what
yeah,
it was.
exactly, right. The one thing I will bring
Yeah,
up because I think this might have a little bit to do with it. I think I fully believe this. I wonder if the ownership group sort of noticed in this last season that fans weren't really coming to see the old guard of Markstrom or Lindholm or all of these guys, Huberdeau, Kadri. They were coming to the games for Zary at one point. They were coming to the games for Coronado. They were coming to the games especially for Dustin Wolf. Like every single time he was starting, the whole dome just lit up. And I wonder if that has any sort of impact. Like seeing how much I wonder if the ownership actually started to notice how much the fans are just done with the past group that didn't really get us very far. Like there's not much reason to want to cheer for these guys that are just going to get us to at best a first round exit, right? Throughout this season. Of course the fans are going to want to cheer for the guys that are showing you what the future could look like. And I mean I wonder if that had a bit of an impact. I hope it did, because if that is the case, I think that is sort of being reflected through the Conroy moves a little bit. Especially with
yeah,
the whole thing that you pointed out there. I mean, you're definitely right. The moves we've seen over the last year would not have happened if the ownership group wasn't completely behind it, but still. It is definitely a little
yeah,
bit worrying knowing what this team's pattern is a little bit to try and almost self-destruct while trying to make themselves better. I don't want to see these like 6 or so first round picks get turned into like I said, Tarasenko or something like
yeah.
that. That would be very
It's
sad.
well, it's. I think it was just about a lack of patience, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest thing. It's just the whether it was Tree Living or the ownership, or probably most likely a little bit of both. Somebody got impatient and said we need to win now, and yeah, like that does scare you because the Flames are probably going to be not very good for the next at least 2 to 3 seasons. Like because it's 6 first-round picks in the next 3 years. So I think it's gonna be a
if
while
not
before
longer.
those start actually panning out.
Yeah, like, because
If not longer.
yeah,
It's not going to be a good couple of years, and you start to wonder if the ticket numbers start to dwindle, the ownership maybe gets antsy, but who knows? I do think again, I think the fact that these moves have even happened at all is kind of a sign that we're past the point of no return, because I think if you were gonna I just think it wouldn't have happened if they didn't as much as you kind of like to dunk on owners as sports fans, they're not like stupid generally. They have to know that this is going to be a long process.
yeah, you
So
gotta hope
you have to hope that
that, or you gotta
that the
hope that
money
Craig
grubbing
Conroy
doesn't
is willing to
take over.
die on his sword a little bit to let his plan go through, right? Because it pressure from ownership doesn't mean that he has to do anything. Pressure from ownership means that he might lose his job if he doesn't, right? And you gotta hope that whoever they bring in after Conroy, if they really do get sick of it, is willing to see it through, or at the very least, like you said, ownership is willing to let Conroy ride it out a little bit. Because the thought I have in my head immediately is I can't remember his name. I think it was like Stan Van Gundy, one of the two. One, but in Philly, back when they were in their like tank phase of the 2010s, where he kept preaching, just give me, trust the process. Give me more time. They got a bunch of first round picks, and right before it all started to work out and Joel Embiid broke out, they fired him. But he was willing to die on his sword, and they didn't trade away Embiid or anything like that, and it sort of ended up working out for them. Not really, but sort of. They at least got their superstar out of it, right? Which I think a lot of people in Calgary would be pretty happy about if we could somehow manage to pull a first overall pick at some point in the next couple of years. So I think, at least to me, I really hope they end up pulling through with it, but it is tough. I do understand that it is tough, because I think the ownership looks at contracts like Kadri, like Huberdeau, and goes like, there's still potential in those guys. We can pull them back. The Kadri of the 2021 season, Huberdeau, 70 assists. No,
I don't
not
know
really,
how
but
you can look at that.
I don't know.
I
either,
almost
but
think it's the opposite way, because I bet they only gave Conroy the green light to do this because they saw how colossally bad these contracts are. Because
yeah,
I think you get into this spirit of saying like, oh, like we can still do this, when you have years like the Flames would have, where they
yeah,
would be terrible and then they would go first in the Western Conference. They'd still get out in the first round, but like there would be hope, right? And you'd be like, oh no, there's still hope. I think the Flames have been bad enough for long enough, and the Huberdeau didn't bounce back, and we haven't seen. Kadri obviously has been good at times, but he has
he's
not
not
lived
the
up to his
same.
contract.
Yeah, he's not the same. Like Kadri,
Yeah,
we're paying him what,
yeah.
$7 million?
I think
He's
you look
probably
at
a
that.
$5.5 million player.
Yeah, yeah. I think you look at that, and then I think that's when you have to say, okay, yeah, there we go. That's kind of the nail in the coffin for this whole idea that we still have a little bit of hope in just trying to push through. It's time to hit the reset button because this didn't work.
Yeah, and the nice thing with this, with how it all might work out, we might have a good team by the time we actually get a new arena. That's kind of where my brain goes, which is exciting in a sense. It does suck a
Yep.
little bit to know that we might have seen the last of the playoffs in the Dome. I think that might be the most sad thing that I could
Oh yeah.
possibly think of. But at the end of the
And
day,
we go out by losing to the Oilers, hey?
oh fuck yeah,
It's a bad way to do it.
that is a bad way to do it. There's no way. I think the Flames are gonna pull a first round like towards the end there. Like this, we are such a first round exit team almost constantly that I could never see us getting a first overall pick. I can't see us getting a top 5. It's such a weird thought in my head. It is possible now, considering we're so like ripped to pieces at this point. Like we've sold everything for parts, and the team is a lot younger, but I don't know. I still don't think we're quite top 5 bad, at least in my opinion. When I look at the roster, we're certainly, there's potential to be top 5 bad. Like if Dustin Wolf flops and like Vladar isn't ready for the pressure, if he ends up having to step in as the starter. Like, there's a lot of things that could go wrong. It just doesn't feel like they will. Which, for the Flames, it almost feels like that might not be a good thing. It almost would be better if he sucked bad enough and could get a. Oh crap! What's his name again? What's the guy who's gonna go first overall next year? You don't got a clue.
Don't ask me. I haven't looked past. I haven't looked past this year's draft.
Yeah, fair enough. I barely looked at this year's draft. Whatever. It doesn't matter that much. But
the one thing
yeah, go ahead.
The one thing I would say to what you just said in terms of like the Flames not being a top 5, I think they can be. I think the best case scenario, because you talk about like, oh, if Wolf flops, well, I think then you're really hooped, because then your young players are not performing well. You're not just gonna build a team with the 6 players you bring in from the first round pick. You have to continue to build based on the young prospects that you already have. I think the best case scenario is that guys like who are still on the roster, who are the veterans like Kadri, continue to not play well, and that continues to drag you down. But it's the young players that show promise, almost just a continuation of last season. Like I think that's kind of what you have to see.
Can I tell you something that'll make you feel very happy? So very, very prestigious NHL website called lines.com, which I'm sure you've heard of, by the way. Trust me, you've heard of them. Don't worry about it. They released their 2025 NHL mock draft. And they have the Flames getting the number 3 and number 8 pick. So it's going to happen.
From who?
The number 8 pick.
Like which pick was that?
That's a great question. The number 8 pick. Oh, I completely Wait. From Montreal? What? What?
Maybe this mock draft has them making trades. Because what?
No, that's from.
This is. Hold the phone.
Am I looking at like something completely? Oh, is it Florida's? It might be Florida's. Isn't that what it is? Yeah, it's Florida's. So they have Florida sucking. That's their prediction.
What? They're in the Stanley Cup Finals, and
I know that is the crazy thing. That is quite the lines.com is throwing some wild shit in there. Huh.
Yeah.
Is that from first round? Yeah, it's the Florida pick. That is the one that they have there. So they are assuming Florida sucks next year. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Your massive NHL prediction straight from lines.com, we are not affiliated with in any way, shape, or form.
Jeez.
I just felt like sharing that because I pulled up this mock. I pulled up this mock draft just to see who was going number 1, whose name is James Haggins, by the way, who I can't say I've heard of. So NHL prospects dummy over here. But yeah, I saw the Flames sitting at 3 and 8, and I was like, oh, it's pretty good. I ain't gonna complain about that. If we get 3 and 8, are you kidding me? Caleb, don't break my heart.
It's not gonna happen. Don't.
I can get my hopes up.
I'm gonna have to let you down easy.
Darn.
No.
Darn.
Before we move on from this segment, I do kind of want to talk about it from the Devils side.
Maybe
obviously
a good
Flames
idea.
fans talk about it from the Flames perspective. We could do that for hours probably, but I do think that Devils fans, I think you have to be worried a little bit on the pattern that we've seen from Markstrom, the whole 1 season on, 1 season off thing, but also this is such a good deal for them. I think just because
there's almost no
Flames
downside.
fans were a little bit underwhelmed. It wasn't that much that they had to give up, and you're getting a solution to what was your biggest issue last year. And Markstrom, if he plays the same as he did last year, you're getting a goalie who's one of the better goalies in the league, and it provides so much more security for all the young players that you have in your team. Like, there's a reason that the Devils were so openly pursuing a goalie, and they got probably the best one available. Because you look at all the other free agents and people who could be available to trade, maybe Allmark, you could argue, but other than that, Markstrom was the best guy available, and they got him. And for a team like the Devils, who we had so much hope for last year, I think this kind of does a lot to renew that hope.
Do you My question, I'm gonna immediately toss it right back over to you here. Do you think Markstrom makes the Devils one of the best teams in the NHL? Because that is the one thing I'm hearing. There are people who are so excited about the Devils finally getting a goalie that they are basically going, "Oh, well, hand them the cup. They got it." I've actually seen that online, so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far because I think you have to. I think if we've seen anything from this year, it's that you need a lot more, and you need a lot deeper of a team, and you need a lot more experienced of a team. Like the Devils are a very young,
Yeah,
exciting team, and I think with Markstrom they will improve a lot from last year. Um, I think the window's going to be tight. I think that they do become a playoff team in my eyes. I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is that they will return to the playoffs, I believe. And I could see them winning a round, maybe even a couple. But I think saying they're immediately one of the best teams in the NHL, especially coming out of that Eastern Conference,
yep.
I could just see them run into a Florida or a New York
They are in the same
even like a
division
Boston
as the
in the
Rangers
second
and
or
the
third
Hurricanes,
round.
I believe. So that immediately
Yeah.
just breaks that team. I honestly think there is some merit behind it if you just look at their skill. I mean, they are so insanely stacked, especially in the top 6, that I don't even necessarily hate that people have that opinion. I think that there is a lot of reason to be that excited because the main reason that they struggled last season was because they just could not find good goaltending to save their lives. And it quite literally was the reason they died. So there you go. Like, it was just not, there was no way they were ever going to win with the goaltending they were getting. And now they have that, it feels like they have that last puzzle piece a little bit, right? So I understand it a lot. I think you made a really good point, though. In the experience side of things, they don't have that. They really don't have that. I think when I go through this entire roster and look for guys with like real NHL playoffs experience, I think like Palat, he was part of like the Lightning's runs. Was Timo Meyer on the team when the Sharks went to the Cup final? I don't even remember. I don't think so. Like
Mm,
it's not.
maybe a little bit too late.
Yeah, I think he might have been a little bit too late, but like seriously, I think that's it. Because I mean, again, this is another. Yeah, no, this one I think is definitely too late. But the only other one I think is Dougie Hamilton, because I think he was too late for those Boston runs in like the mid 2010s. So I don't think that he was part of any of those. So that's pretty much it for playoff experience on this team, which is like the one knock you can absolutely toss at them. They haven't been there before. It's that type of thing. But we are seeing with this Oilers team this year, if you want an example of a team that doesn't necessarily have that much playoff experience but is still pushing through. It's I don't know. I'm really excited. I know it's gonna be really funny
Yeah,
when we get into our like preseason like predictions and I predict the Devils to go stupid far and
and
then
you
they
predict them to win the cup
yeah
again.
and then they suck. Like it's gonna be really funny when that happens, but nonetheless, I'm excited. I think they do have a very good team. I think part of the reason we didn't talk about them right out of the jump is because there's almost not much to say about them. There's nothing that me or you could really say that's different than anybody has been said out in the
Yeah,
internet currently. Because it's even if you're not convinced
it's
they
a great
will be a
trade for
world
them.
beater, they are still one of the best teams out there. Like they're probably going to be they're going to be hellish even if I don't necessarily think they're quite on the Canes or the Rangers or Florida's level, they could totally give them a tough fight. Which I think is half the exciting part, right? I don't even know if the expectation needs to be go win the cup this year. I think it just needs to be show us something more than anything else. Let's see what you got a little bit.
Yeah. And the one last thing I would say about this for the Devils side is your window's tight. Is that they only have 2 years left on the deal for Markstrom, and I believe by the time that deal is done, he'll be 36.
Yep,
So
I
at
think
that
that's right.
point, are you giving a contract extension to, because he's 34 now? So are you giving a contract extension to a 36-year-old goalie? And that's kind of the question, I think. Is I think at a certain point you wonder whether that skill's going to fall off. And like we talked about, it's a very young team. And so I think you just have to hope that there's 1 year, maybe it's in the last year of his current contract or the first year of his probably final contract in the NHL, that everything just kind of links up. He's still playing to a high level, and the team like clicks everything together and finally has the experience and depth necessary to take them to a cup final. Because I do think it is just kind of the thing where you look at it and say, this is a great move. It immediately helps their team, immediately addresses their biggest need. But I think everything kind of has to time up together. The window in terms of having a championship window open is very tight.
It's almost like you immediately start looking for his replacement, like right now. Like, I honestly wouldn't hate if the Devils tried to draft a goalie pretty high here in the draft. I think that would be a pretty smart move.
I wouldn't be shocked, honestly.
Yeah, that would probably be pretty smart, especially with how long goalies take to develop. If you can have that goalie, probably not. I don't think you could possibly have him. But in some imaginary world where they get like the next superstar goalie, if you could have him playing behind at that point, probably 36-year-old Markstrom in like 3 years, that'd be a pretty good spot to be in, right? I think that kind of you asked the question of whether I think that they should be looking to extend him in 2 years. It completely depends on how well he does. Like I think if he even has one down here, you look to move on. If he has 2 really good years, I could see them signing him for like a one more let's take a crack at it type deal. Like it probably wouldn't be a lot of money. But I guess if they don't want him, I'm sure somebody else will. He'll probably I could see a world where Markstrom bounces around the league for like the last 2 years if he wants to stick around a little bit after that. I could also see him just ride his pony out into the sunset, especially if they find a way to win in the next 2 years. But who knows?
Yeah,
it's
it'll
definitely
be
it's not
really
impossible.
Interesting to see how that plays out.
It will. I agree with you there. So, next up on the docket, we have the trade between the Capitals and the Kings. Basically just swapping Dubois and Kemper, getting rid of 2 sort of disappointing players on both of their team sides and giving them kind of a fresh start with Dubois having a very, very disappointing season that pretty much everybody knew about. I think one of the stats I saw recently was McDavid almost having more points than Dubois in the playoffs compared to Dubois in the regular season, which is absolutely hilarious. And Kemper on the other side hasn't been broadcasted quite as much, but he had quite a little bit more of a disappointing season on a bad Capitals team, going 13, 14, and 3 with a 3.31 goals against average and a .890 save percent. So just overall, both players sort of underperforming, and now they're both sort of getting fresh starts. And the one unfortunate thing, I think the one reason there's a little bit of imbalance is in the contracts. I think Dubois is making close to $9 million, if I remember off the top of my head. I want to find that number now. I'm
pulling it up now.
Okay.
I'm pulling it up.
Well, while you pull it up,
Kemper's cap hit is currently a little bit over $5 million a year, five and a quarter, and he's in the next upcoming season will be the 3rd year of a 5-year deal. Dubois' contract is, let me go to cap friendly before it gets eventually taken down. RIP.
By the Capitals.
Dubois' cap hit. Yeah, fair enough. True. Dubois' cap hit is $8.5 million.
Okay.
And Dubois is in, probably like the second. The second.
He's got to be
like
second
year deal or 8-year deal.
Yeah. So it's the cap. The cap
He's
are not.
Free until like 2032.
The cap's not even. That's more the point I was trying to make there is even without the numbers in front of me, I had a pretty good idea that was the case. As I mean, across the board, it's not exactly an even trade. I think if both players bounce back, we'll start looking at this trade as one that makes a lot of sense. But as of right now, you have to, especially if you're the Capitals, you have to be really confident in Dubois, I think is the one thing that a lot of people have echoed. I don't remember what the GM of the Capitals' name is, but I remember the comment he made immediately after the trade went through is that he thinks Dubois still has immense potential and can still turn into something really, really good. And I think this sort of trade is a sign of that, because they are willing to give him that 6 year, potentially 6 years of $8 million. They just took that off the Kings. The Kings would have had to hold on to that anchor for however long that they would have had to. The Capitals just took that away from them. And that certainly makes things a little bit more interesting now, is they're kind of betting on themselves a little bit. I wonder if Ovechkin running out of time here has something to do with that, as they still are trying to compete. I've talked way too much, so I'll toss it over to you to give you a chance to give your opinion, Caleb. But I think to wrap up what I'm saying is I feel very weird about this trade. It's a very weird one, especially I think the Kings won. Honestly, that would be my opinion, just because of the contracts, though. It has nothing to do with the players. You're trading money.
I agree that the Kings won, but I think I'm a lot stronger in one side of it than you are. I think the Kings fleeced them. I think this is going to be looked at as one of the best trades. I don't know. In this, I maybe I won't make it too bold of a declarative statement here, but I think it's going to be looked at as one of the better trades in the next 5 years. And I think it's just because of that whale of a contract that they gave Dubois, that even before, even when it was signed, when he was not playing bad, he was playing pretty good.
I don't think he's ever had more than 70 points in a year. Has he? I think he had a 70-point season.
On potential.
Yeah.
It's always been banking on potential for him. And it's not entirely unearned, but it was this season where you look at him and finally say, oh, it's fallen off the cliff, and oh no, we've just given him a contract that's top of the league type money for 8 years. What are we going to do? That's the kind of contract, we talked about it in the last segment, that's the type of contract that you give Huberdeau, and you look at it as a franchise and say, this is a franchise record. It's a franchise record of a contract. And they were able to somehow move it and not have to give up anything. A lot of the times when you're moving a contract this, you will have to give a team a first round pick just to take the contract off of you. Think about the Flames and Sean Monahan, when Sean Monahan kind of seemed like damaged goods, where the Flames had to give up a first round pick to get Montreal to take Monahan off of them. It's honestly shocking that the Kings didn't have to do that. And you pair it with the fact that, yes, the player they're getting back in Kemper, obviously similar kind of situation where disappointing season. But I think I have a lot more faith in Kemper bouncing back and at least providing something than I do Dubois. Because I think with Dubois, you're banking on him bouncing back not just to the status he was, but to the status of what his contract is, which is superstar level. And that feels almost unattainable. With LA, their goalie situation is already kind of mercurial and uncertain at this point anyways. So throw in Darcy Kemper into the mix, maybe he'll play well, maybe he won't. For him to bounce back, it's just living up to him being a average or slightly above average type goaltender for the next season. And I think that feels a lot more likely than the Dubois thing. And even if it doesn't work out, then whatever, you only have to ride out the Kemper contract for another couple more years at a lessened cap hit. Whereas the Dubois contract, you have to ride out for basically how, as the GM, you're going to be fired before Dubois is gone from this team. I don't know. I look at this deal and I'm just how, if you're the Capitals, do you ever accept that? If the Kings come to me with this deal and I'm the GM of the Capitals, I laugh them out of the room.
Yeah, and one point I really wanted to make, actually. The funny thing is that when he signed that contract, he actually was coming off of a career year of 63 points. So, I mean, even at that point, I don't even know where the hype came from, honestly. I know I'm looking at it in retrospect. Right? I know, but so was Yakupov. And, I'm looking at the points, and I don't know what he ever had. He had 27 goals in his last season with Winnipeg. 27 goals, 36 assists, +5 plus minus, 77 minutes in the box. He just was not very good. even in that last season, he was not an $8 million player. And I understand you're banking on him potentially reaching that next level. But if he almost had the same season in 2018, I think what we've sort of seen is that that's his ceiling. 60 points a season is Dubois' ceiling. He is a fine power forward. He's a great second or even third line center. Does he need an $8 million contract? Absolutely not. He should have never been given that deal. And now the Capitals have that. They will. The funny thing, the point I was going to make immediately after what you said, because I think you did make a lot of good points. The one thing I'll disagree with is I do not think that there needs to be any expectation on Kemper. Kemper could be an AHL starter for the next 3 years and just be an albatross on the Kings books, and Dubois could have 3 more 60-point seasons, and I would still say the Kings won. That is the funny thing, because you got rid of that $8 million contract. Because no matter what Dubois does, he is never going to be able to live up to that. No matter what. You should never be paying that amount of money for a guy who only scores 60 points a season. That is just ridiculous. Like, imagine giving even, like, as a comparison, like, I think, like, Michael Backlund, right? Michael Backlund is a fine center. He is great. Would I ever give him a $6.5 or $7 million contract for, like, his 40, 50-point seasons? Absolutely not. Never in a million years. As much as I love having him on the Flames, I would never do that. And it's the same thing with Dubois. He's a fine player. He's a great power forward. And if he is on the right team for less than $5 million, give him $5, $6 million. Awesome. Give him 8. Shoot me in the head before I take him on my team. Like, it's just not a contract you ever want.
Yeah. And I think the Backlund comparison is interesting as Flames fans, because I think we all look at Backlund fairly positively, and I think one of the reasons is that he never had a season like with the Kings where it's just such a drop off, and it just feels like Dubois has been so up and down where you just don't know what to expect. One of the best things about Backlund is that he's so consistent. Yeah. There's also the leadership factor of it too. Backlund brings that as well. Where I if you're giving me the 2 players straight up, I'd honestly say I prefer Backlund.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Age, disregarding age, I don't know. I just think
prime Backlund. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's such a question. It's just such a questionable move. I don't know. I think it's one of those things where you look back and as a Capitals fan, and like in 3 or 4 years, you're gonna be like, oh, like I can't believe there's still like 4 more years left on this Dubois deal. Like we can't get anything done in free agency. We're just completely hamstrung because we got an additional nearly $9 million on the books. I don't understand if this deal, like the Capitals got back like a first round pick or like a couple picks.
No, I don't know.
At least it makes it. At least you get something.
You know what? Can I throw a point out there though, just quick? Because I remember you bringing up the Monahan trade, and I think that's a really, really good example. Except for the fact that the length on that contract was a lot shorter than 8 years. Like, you got to understand, like, that Monahan trade, it was handcuffing a bad Montreal Canadiens team for a season. Like, if he was bad, it ended up working out for them, which is the funny thing.
Turned it around.
Yeah, exactly. But let's say he was bad, it would have ended up handcuffing them for 1 or 2 seasons, right? That's it, and then it would be over. That's not the case here. You're taking a first round pick, for example, for Dubois, and sure, you might get a great prospect, but that prospect will be in his mid-20s before Dubois is out of the building. Which I think you're not just taking 1 or 2 seasons to being handcuffed. You are signing away $8 million every season for a guy who can maybe give you 60 points on his best day. Maybe get you... He's never had a 30-goal season. I was going to say maybe get you 30 goals. He's gotten 24 or 27, twice in his career, never gone higher. It's such a scary thing now. Especially as somebody who really wanted Ovi to have that type of like, let's see Ovi in the playoffs again, like one more time. You know, let's see the Capitals continue to just run into the wall and get knocked out in the first round. Let Ovi have a few more appearances. This ain't it. This ain't it, dog. This ain't gonna get you there.
No.
So it's
not. It's not. I mean, like, I don't know. I think about with the Monahan trade, like exactly what you said, where it was actually a lot like the Monahan deal was a lot easier to shrug off, which is why it's just so much more astounding that they didn't get anything back, because I would have expected even a lot more. And I don't know. I just think the last thing that I kind of have to say on it is, I look at this and I look at the cap number and I try to think of what's best case scenario for Dubois with the Capitals, where I say, what kind of season does it take for me to say, okay, like, I think this is probably his ceiling. Like, I can't see it getting any better than this. Maybe he hits, I'll just, like, throwing random point numbers out there. His highest is, like, 60. Let's say he improves on that by, like, 20. Let's say he has, like, an 80-point season, right?
Yeah.
At that point, I'm still not looking at the contract and saying, like, oh, wow, what a steal. I'm looking at that and saying, okay, that's getting there. That's pretty close to fair. When that's, like, your best case scenario, saying, that's pretty good. I don't see... that just makes it so much worse for me.
Is there a world...
In the fact that best case scenario, it's still, like, it's okay.
Is there a world where Dubois comes back and has a 90-point season, scores 40 goals, and, like, turns the Capitals into a playoff team? Like, can you even imagine... No. In the multiverse, where there is infinite realities, can you even imagine one? Like, I'm imagining, like, you're walking up to Doctor Strange, and you're like, is there even one? What's our percentage of succeeding? He's telling you nada. Ain't happening, buddy. Go home. Like, because that's the funny thing. Like, this is going to be the clip that comes back in a year as well.
Yeah. Of course he's going to break out and he's going to have like 120
Of course he is. Like, it's going to be absolutely hilarious when it happens. But he's just not the type of player I can ever imagine getting to that point, because he's just not. Like, he's a power forward. Like, I think of, like, and this is shitty because it's making it sound like I'm saying that you shouldn't pay a player even like a Ginla. But the thing with a Ginla is even he could never, as that type of play style, he could never break 100 points. So with Dubois, you're paying him like a guy who's going to do that. You're not necessarily getting leadership out of him. You're not getting a locker room guy. You're just getting a guy you expect to hit and score goals. And he can't do either of those things very well. And you paid him $8 million. It's just like, what the fuck? Like, it doesn't make any sense, really. Like, so at least that's my argument against it. Like, I look at a player like Dubois, and he's just not it. He was never going to be it. Don't give him this contract. He's a perfectly fine power forward who could have had a 15-year career. I honestly think this contract permanently taints his career. I think he's going to be living in his Malibu mansion until he's dead, but it doesn't matter for, like, if he's trying to actually have a legacy. I think it's going to look poor at the end of the day, even if he ends up having like a 800, 900 point career, which might not be unrealistic. Right? Like, it's just, he's never going to be a better player than that. That's all he is. That's his ceiling. That's the thing. And again, I'm saying all this and he's going to have a 120-point season, yada, yada, yada. Like, it's going to come back and bite me in the ass. But I don't know. It's just a wild thought to me to imagine a world where, especially think about his line mates. He's playing with an Ovi who can't skate and, like, what? Matt Milano, like, it's not gonna like that's not a good world. That's not a good world to be living in. That's not any better than he had in LA. Well, he has a sniper.
It's worse than he had in LA.
Yeah, arguably. Like, he has a sniper on his line, but it's not like Dubois is a passer. And Ovi's not exactly known for setting up guys. So it's not, I don't know. There's not a lot there, at least that I can see, that gets me too excited. But who knows? Maybe Dubois ends up being the next Backstrom and they win a cup next year. Which, speaking of which, as we begin to wrap this up, I will bring that up. I did see that on Twitter earlier today. Somebody, like, posted the Capitals' potential top 6, and they just went like, is this it? Are the Capitals going to get Ovi number 2? And I'm like, no. Not in a million years. Are they going to get Ovi his, like, however many like get Ovi another playoff first round exit? Maybe. But are they maybe like that might be in the books, is going further if they get out of the first round, open the champagne, like, because that'll mean they're beating like a first or second seed. So,
and you're not going to go much further than that.
Yeah. As for LA, because I think we beat on Dubois quite a bit, I actually do like it for them. I think Kemper upgrades the one sort of nitpick I think a lot of people had in their entire team, is because they have a good team. They have a very good team. It's very deep. It's very, very solid defensively. They play with a certain style that not a lot of teams necessarily play with, and it works for them. The only reason they really lost in the first round, because I don't necessarily think they're a first round exit team most years, is they ran into the Oilers, who, I mean, we saw what they've been able to do this entire season, and they ran into a team with a superstar. I think the Kings with Kemper, if Kemper bounces back, have the potential to be a second. Maybe if they do really, really well and get a couple breakouts, they can maybe make a conference, which I think is more than they probably would have had without a better goaltender. I think they were going to forever get handicapped without a better goalie. So that's good for them, at the very least.
And it hasn't been that long. When did the Avs win the Cup? Like 3 years ago at this point? I think my gut's saying 2.
Yeah, I think
2022, I think.
Yeah.
It's only been 2 years since Kemper won the Stanley Cup for a team. Yeah. He obviously wasn't the reason.
No, he was not.
But to even get to that point as a goalie, you have to have, like, you can't be terrible. He's shown that if you think about it in NFL terms, it's like, can you win a Super Bowl with this quarterback? Like, yeah, you can. He may not be the reason you get there, but you can do it. And like, you kind of
so you're saying that Kemper is the Joe Flacco of the NFL, of the NHL? Is that the comment that you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Flacco just won comeback player of the year. I mean, I don't know.
LA, you just got yourself your Joe Flacco.
Hearing that a year ago versus now is a much different connotation.
That's true. That's true. I more mean it like with the year ago connotations, but still, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very. I think you're right, because I think the biggest point is that, like I kind of said before, the goalie market is very weak this year. The best goalie on the market is the goalie they already had in Cam Talbot. So they could.
Oh, you're just talking free agency. Yeah.
Free agency.
Yeah.
That's why, like, the Markstrom move, I think, was even bigger for New Jersey, because there's not a lot of goalies out there.
Yeah, and the Kings were never in on Markstrom either.
Yeah, this is a very, like, it's not swinging for the fences, but it's not. It's a safe move, but it's a calculated safe move. Even if you just look at it from the acquiring Kemper perspective, without even putting in all the stuff about Dubois, which we've already kind of talked to death. But yeah, like I think it's just a smart move. And a trade like this, where it's usually just trading 2 bad contracts for each other, they managed to get a player who, if a couple things turn around, could actually, like, really help them and could be a key piece in a sore spot of need. And I think you can't ask for much more than that. Now, I promise you guys, I know you already have your fingers in the comment box and are waiting to say, you're such morons. Why did you put my favorite team as the most overrated team in the NFL? Oh my god. It's going to be this kind of a segment. We're going to make you mad. There's going to be some opinions you don't like. That's kind of just the premise. We're going to be looking at both of our what we think are the most overrated teams in the NFL. Now, to kind of quell the anger, I will say overrated does not necessarily mean bad. At least for me. Because I put a team on this list does not mean I think they're bad. They're probably actually pretty good, considering that to be overrated, you have to be thought of fairly highly. Now, with that being said, these teams are teams where we look through and we say most of the NFL media, whatever it may be, they think this team is this good, And while we may think they're good, we think they're significantly less good than most people think they are. That's what the basis of this segment is. We'll get into it. We'll go back and forth. Probably get into some fun arguments along the way.
And I will agree with you, Caleb. You're not trying to piss anyone off. I absolutely am. I actually went into little Billy's, and I'm talking to you, Billy. I went into your head and I looked at what team you like the most, and I put it right at the tippy top of my list, just to piss you off, just to ruin your day. That is what my goal was. So little Jimmy out there, just remember that. There's different goals here.
Watch your back, little Jimmy.
What? Yeah, we're coming
little
for
Billy.
You.
I think he changed it midway through that monologue.
Maybe that was the joke all along. Who knows? I lost grip of it halfway through, just like we're already losing grip of this fucking segment. Hurrah!
Well, Simon, if you want to start with your,
Sure.
you want to go number 5, so your 5th most overrated team in the league.
So this was a very hard list to make. I think we were talking about that as we kind of both sat here trying to make our lists. I kind of went off Super Bowl odds because I think that's a good way to sort of look at it. Even with the teams that you're kind of like, yeah, no way in hell they're going to get it. They still have Super Bowl odds, and it's a good way to compare what people are sort of thinking their odds are compared to other teams. And the one that jumped off immediately to me, and I don't necessarily think they're that overrated because I think a lot of people have a pretty fair expectation of them, but this kind of proved me wrong. Number 5, I have the Chargers, who, while being ranked 21st, they have very similar Super Bowl odds to the Falcons, the Dolphins, and the Jets, which is absurd. They should not be anywhere near that argument. They are good. As long as Herbert is there, they will be fine, but they will never, ever, they are nowhere close to being as good of a team as mainly the Falcons and Jets. The Dolphins and Jets. Falcons I threw in there more as a bit of a side-in since the odds are similar, but I even think the Falcons are a little bit above them. So I think the fact that they're even in that conversation is just absurd. So that's mine. I think they're fine. This is not a diss on Herbert. I think Herbert is a great quarterback. I just think that he really does not have a lot of depth around him to work with, especially this season. So to me, they're number 5 on my list. So there you go. That's the start.
Yep. And I think those Super Bowl odds are kind of crazy. I don't have them on my list.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have pegged them as one of the most overrated teams
exactly.
Just because I didn't think they were very rated to begin with.
Exactly.
Like, if you know what I mean.
It's odd.
But that probably is the Harbaugh effect. And I think that's
true.
more just a stupid thing with the Super Bowl odds overrating that maybe. Because I think even Harbaugh would probably tell you, yeah, we're not going to win a Super Bowl this year. Like, because I love what the Chargers are doing. It's just not their year, right?
No.
Like, they're very clearly building in the trenches. That tackle duo of Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater is going to be fantastic for many years to come. But while Justin Herbert's going to have a lot more time in the pocket, he still doesn't have anyone to throw to. The defense is still kind of like scatterpoint. It's not a complete roster. They're going to be, I think, better than they were last year. I think it'll be an improvement on where they are with both coaching and improvements, especially on the offensive line. But to put them alongside teams like
it's mainly
Dolphins,
the Dolphins.
Jets are the big one where they have
the Dolphins are the big
The
one.
Dolphins are the big one.
Yeah, like that is a ridiculous statement to make. I think the Dolphins were higher, but I think it was like 2,500 to like 3,000. Right? Like that is barely a difference. And that is crazy to me, especially with how good they were at points last year. I think if the Dolphins, whether that's a point that the Dolphins should just be higher altogether or honestly, I just think it shows how low the Chargers should be more than anything else. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that they are ranked even remotely close to that. But I'll toss it over to you. Who do you got at 5?
So the 5th spot was really difficult for me, but I'm gonna go with a team that I don't know. It's very interesting because I think when you talk about them changes this a lot. Because I think if you talk about them like 6 months ago, I wouldn't have said they were overrated. But there's a cycle that happens. My favorite NFL podcast that I listen to, one of the hosts always has this bit about this team where he says, every offseason, no matter what this GM does, it's like, oh, they won the offseason. Look at them go. Yeah. He's done it again. Look at him go. And then it does it like we see this happen year after year after year, and they've had some success with it, but especially after last year, you kind of look at it and say, are we really right to crown them year after year? Are we really right to say this team looks so great? And that team and that GM is Howie Roseman and the Eagles. Because you look at this team and you look at Howie Roseman and a lot of his moves in a vacuum, yeah, you look at them and you think, wow, this is great. I love a lot of what the Eagles did this offseason. I think bringing in Saquon Barkley is a fantastic move. I think they had an amazing draft. Getting Cooper DeJean and the other corner's name is escaping me, guy from Toledo, Quinion Mitchell. I think those are fantastic moves to make, but I don't think you can ignore the fact that this team had a monumental collapse at the end of last season, that they were one of the worst teams in football. You just look at their last half of the season where they had a chokehold in the NFC East and they ended up losing it to the Cowboys and then going out in the first round of the playoffs to the Bucs. And that roster isn't that much different. Yeah, you have some young talent. Yeah, you brought in Barkley, but that roster ultimately isn't that different. You still have Sirianni, which is where a lot of people think the issues are. And just because of these offseason moves, people have been like, oh yeah, they'll be fine. And are just ignoring this stretch entirely. I think that's kind of short-sighted in my opinion. And well, would I be surprised if they kind of get back to that Super Bowl form they had a couple years ago? Not necessarily, but I think they have to prove it to me again. I think they have to go on a run to say, oh yeah, like we're back. Like we actually showed that we learned from last year's mistakes and some of this talent that we've infused over the offseason is actually making a substantial difference. And before they do that, I'm not going to put them at, like you use Super Bowl odds, I use ESPN Power Rankings. They have them at number 5. Right up there with the conference finalists from last year. And that's just a huge jump to me that doesn't make the most amount of sense. They had a good offseason, but especially with that and losing Jason Kelce, which I think is a huge loss for them. Yeah. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And well, I don't think they're a bad team. I think they're a very good team. I just think they have to prove something to me again before I go about crowning them the 5th best team in the NFL.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think it just completely depends on what you think of the Eagles, right? Because a lot of people are very, very high on them. And at least to me, the only reason I disagree with you is I think there's a lot of reason to be very, very high on them. Like, take away them collapsing at the end of the year, on paper, their roster is ridiculous. Like, sure, they lost Jason Kelce, but what they were able to bring in is almost as good. Like, you gotta wonder if Saquon Barkley and if that O-line can surprise, losing Jesus, I'm tripping all over the place. Losing Jason Kelce sucks, but if Barkley can still have a good season behind the O-line that they have left, that Eagles team can be really, really scary. Because I think DeAndre Swift was the guy they had last year. DeAndre Swift is great. Is he Saquon Barkley? Absolutely not. That is a crazy upgrade for them. And I think that really, really makes their offense just that much more scary to me, even if they are losing their all-star center. So I do agree with you. I think 5 might be a little high for them. I think that saying if they were to slide like somewhere before, like, I don't know, 7, 8, I would not be calling them overrated. 5 might be high though. I don't hate that you have them here. I think 5. The funny thing, 5 on your list, like literally least overrated of the overrated teams, feels like a good spot for the Eagles. So I don't even hate that.
Yeah. I could honestly, looking back at this list though, I think I might push them higher. I think I might have pushed them over my number 4 team like while I'm making this case.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking back at this, I'm like just looking more into this, I get more and more like
that's how it is. Opinion. Yeah.
In their last however many games that was, 7 games. Guess what their record in the last 7 games of the season was? This is the most recent sample we have of their play.
Caleb, I don't even have
the last 7 games. How many games do you think they won out of 7?
3. Based on the way that you're phrasing it, I'll go
1.
3.
1.
Really?
1.
Oh boy. Okay, never mind.
And that
you can have your.
I went against the Giants by only a touchdown.
You know what? I
They
won't
almost finished
argue
the
with
season
you.
off with an 0-7 tear.
I'll shut
And
up.
I think their moves, while they got slightly better, losing Jason Kelsey, you could almost say it's a wash with how important he was to that team and how important the Philly special was to that team. Or not the Philly special,
The
the
Philly
tush
special.
push. Other
God, I
Philly play.
wish.
Wrong famous
Imagine
Philly
if they
play.
were rolling that out every single game. Fuck yeah, that'd be sick.
Jason Kelsey throwing that pass. Anyways, I've angered Eagles fans, which is one of the scariest things you can do. They're about to
that's
show
true.
up at my house, so before
You know
I
what?
get murdered,
That's one of the scariest things you can do. You know what is the scariest thing you can do? Keep it in division and talk about the fucking Cowboys, because they're who I have at number 4 here, because of the fact that they're for some reason in the odds ranked higher than Packers. You're gonna hear Jets and Dolphins a lot because I talk a lot about the middle to like almost elite teams on here, but them being higher than the Packers, Jets, and Dolphins is bonkers to me, just because of how we still haven't seen anything from this Cowboys team. They're basically a consistent second round knockout every single chance they get, and it's I don't understand what they've done to really earn that spots. They have consistently. It seems to me when I think of the Cowboys, I think of a team that is right at the edge of like the elite teams, right? Like I would slide them behind all three of those teams that I mentioned in the Packers, Jets, and Dolphins, and you wouldn't get an argument from me. The fact that they're ahead of all three feels ridiculous, especially with the fact that it doesn't feel like they've gotten any better. I don't think that much has really changed for that team. It's just the same regime taking another run at it, and I don't really see any reason to get that much. Sure, the Cowboys fans are always going to be like, this is our year and all that, and that's never going to go away, so I guess they'll always be overhyped a little bit. But I don't know. I have no issue sliding them right here on number 4. If they were as good, if we were going based on how their fans think how good their fans think they're going to be, they'd be number 1. But I'll keep it fair. I'll keep it fair and put them.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the reason. So I didn't have them on my list.
Okay.
But I do kind of agree with you on a lot of the points you said. I just feel like, to me, the Cowboys have been quote unquote overrated for so long that they're almost no longer overrated.
That's fair.
Or it's just like that. It's just kind of the thing that, like, we know. I feel like a lot of the smoke that's getting blown up our asses is mostly from Cowboys fans, and to be fair, it is still a talented roster.
Yep.
And I think they're probably accurately rated by most people as that second round exit team.
Yeah.
But I do look at them and I do say, I think the best point that you made was just in terms of the fact that they haven't changed anything, and I think that's the biggest cause for concern for me, was especially with the big narrative in the offseason of them being like, we're going all in, and then they just brought in the corpse of Zeke Elliott and we're like, see, we did it,
we're going all in, boys.
I think that exactly.
Our roster from 2018 is gonna break some walls down. Get ready.
35-year-old Zeke Elliott or whatever.
I don't know if he's quite 35, but he runs like he's 35.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. But yeah, I do think that's a good pick. That's not quite the pick I had. This might be one of the more controversial ones. In hindsight, I'd probably
be ready to flip a table
5 and put the Eagles at 4.
Should I
you
flip
probably
a table?
should be.
Okay, I'll be ready.
Let me make a case for this. So my number 4 team is a team. I'm going to preface this by saying I think they're still very good. I think they're still one of the better teams in the AFC. I just think that people are maybe overlooking a lot of the personnel and coaching losses that they've had, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I look at this Baltimore Ravens team, and I think they probably played up to their peak potential last year. I was quite shocked, honestly, that they didn't win the Super Bowl. After what they did to my Seahawks, I thought they were the best team in the NFL. Obviously, it didn't work out that way. Obviously, they came against the Chiefs, who are pretty much inevitable in the postseason. And because of how good they did in the regular season, their staff kind of got gutted. They lost a lot of key players on contract years because everybody is at their peak value. I think the biggest loss for them, and maybe this is just a Seahawks fan wishful thinking, I think the biggest loss for them is going to be Mike McDonald. Because the most intimidating thing about that Ravens team was their defense. And you saw that the Ravens defense was always good, but you saw that transformation from really good to like elite, like terrifying kind of defense when Mike McDonald came in, and the kind of schemes that he would have and the kind of pressure that he'd put on an offense where they wouldn't know where pressure was coming from. They wouldn't know what to see snap to snap. He figured out how to utilize guys like Patrick Queen, who hadn't been able to otherwise see the kind of first round pedigree that he had initially been pegged with. So I do think they are a very good team still. I think they're going to be in contention to win their division. I think they're going to be really good. But I just think that with a lot of their losses, particularly on the coaching side, and I'm just pulling up some of the losses they've had on both sides of the ball. The other big thing, I think, is their losses on the offensive line and on the defense. So some of the big ones are Morgan Moses is gone, their tackle. John Simpson is gone. Kevin Zeitler is gone. Clowney is gone, who had a surprisingly good season last year. You have Patrick Queen is gone. You have Geno Stone is gone as well as starting safety. That is a lot of losses. You lose your entire running back room pretty much. Well, nix that. You got Derrick Henry. But
Yeah.
other than that, I do think that is more losses than the average team, and I think you lose a lot of your coaching. I think it's going to be a big year for Lamar to say, I can step up, and even though he won MVP last year, so this feels crazy to say, it's going to be the year for him to step up and like really hammer that point home, because I think he's going to have to carry this team a little bit more than he did have to last year, because I think that defense has nowhere to go but down. And while I think the talent decrease in the offense isn't nearly as much, I think it is still relatively significant. So it's not a team. This is why I think I moved them down to 5. I moved the Eagles up to 4. I'm not overly passionate about it. I still think they're a good team, but I just think it's a team where I'm like, this may be a team where we see some regression where we weren't otherwise predicting it.
They are a very weird team for me. All of a sudden I just had the biggest brain fart in the fucking world. Holy. What the hell? What team are we talking about? I'm not even kidding. Holy shit. I don't know. The Ravens. What the hell just happened? I like had a whole thought and like had everything planned out, and then it like hit me. I was like, where the fuck am I? What the hell? I am so tired.
Simon's been drugged.
Yeah, apparently. Holy shit. Okay, anyway. Yeah, the point I was going to make, because I remember it now, and I'll cut to this. Like there. Wow, editing magic. So you can break my like mental trip. But the Ravens are a weird team going into this next season, mainly because of the fact that they kind of need to win the complete opposite way that they were winning last season. I think the point of how good their defense was, that is why they were winning. You can talk about how good of a season Lamar Jackson had, even if he won MVP. That's not why they made it as far as they were, or were as scary as they were. This is the season where it'll be the offense that's terrifying. That run game needs to be terrifying. They need to win on offense, which they can do. They have the talent to do it. They have all the pieces. It's just whether they can put it all together in a way that we haven't really seen them do since that first MVP season for Lamar. So it's going to be an interesting season for sure. I don't necessarily hate them in that spot, because I feel like I see something about how good the Ravens are going to be this year every second day, it feels like, especially now that they have Derrick Henry. It feels warranted, but then again, Derrick Henry is getting older. He probably won't be able to take the same amount of snaps that he's been able to take with the Titans. So it's gonna be interesting. They're a team to watch, I think, this year. They're highly rated for a lot of good reasons, but I see where you're coming from and don't even necessarily disagree with you.
Yeah. And this was a hard list to make too. Like, somebody did have to kind of fill that ending spot. And there's just one team where I'm kind of like, again, I don't think they're going to be bad. I think they're still going to be very good. It's just, I think they're maybe a little bit of an unexpected decline.
Yeah.
Anyway, who do you have at number 3, Simon?
I'm really fighting with myself now. I you know what? I'm going to change one of my picks and just announce this one as 3. And although I did have them at 2, I will say that. But at 3, I have the Bills, who, as far as the rankings I've been looking at, they were an 8th they have the same Super Bowl odds as teams like the Texans and the Bengals, and that feels crazy to me considering what they lost. I think that was a big storyline we've talked about this entire offseason with the pieces they lost on defense, obviously losing Stephon Diggs. It's going to be a tough season for them coming up here, as we're going to need to see Josh Daniels, holy shit, Josh Allen step in a way that we have not seen in previous years. And, or not even not seen in previous years. He just needs to have a ridiculous year. This needs to be an MVP Josh Allen, I think, for them to really, really fill that sort of vacuum that I think the being put in eighth kind of creates for them. And I think while when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, anything's possible. But at least to me, especially in that division, that's a scary division. It's the Bills are a weird team for me. I could see them sort of falling off a little bit. I don't think that's that far off. I think people have talked about that, but seeing them ranked at 8th is ridiculous to me. So that's mostly where my argument for them being in 3rd and almost number 2 for me. So,
Simon, this is like, I don't know if this is a good comparison, but this is like when you play Family Feud.
Yeah.
And you just kind of throw out a dart and you unveil the top answer. Because you just guessed my number 1 team.
Oh, wow.
I had the Buffalo Bills as the most overrated team in the NFL, and I guess I can get into it here.
Do I win my free card now or like later on? Like when is that? When am I winning that Toyota Corolla thing? Like when's that happening?
Why don't you come to the back alley and we can sort out your prize?
Right.
But I agree with pretty much everything you just said, but I think I just to an even greater extent.
Okay.
I feel like I've been listening to so many NFL podcasts and so many, like, it just feels like at a certain point of the season, there's so much hype for just novelty, where you just say, like, oh my god, all these rookies are going to be so good, it's just going to slot right in, and it's going to be the same as before. Oh, yeah, it's going to be fine. Keon Coleman, whatever. Like, Stephon Diggs is basically the same guy, right? Like, it's fine, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah,
Josh Allen. If Josh Allen can play running back, he can play wide receiver too, right? Like that's not an issue. Yeah,
he can run himself. It's fine. Like, yeah, we're totally gonna be fine with the receiver room of Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Curtis Samuel. Like, I don't know. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Not just that. I think you brought up their losses. This was a big part of the stuff that I wanted to prepare.
I didn't have the names in front of me, but I figured you would have this team on your list.
I made sure to pull up the
That is why I left it to you. Go ahead. List them off, good sir.
If you want to skip ahead like 2 minutes, I'll still be reading this. Okay, big losses. They're like entire receiving room.
Should I just go get a coffee like during this? Take off my headset? Like,
yeah, you probably should. Gabe Davis to the Jaguars. Stephon Diggs to the Texans, obviously. And then 2 more receivers in Deontay Hardy, Trent Sherfield, not as important, but still, it's a lot of depth. Big one, Mitch Morse, their center for like 10 years, also goes to the Jaguars. That's a huge loss. You lose like 2 major edge rushers in both Shaq Lawson and Leonard Floyd. You lose almost your entire interior defensive line depth. You lose Linval Joseph, Jordan Phillips, Poona Ford. Like, that's insane. Then you go losing Tyrell Dodson to the Seahawks. Linebacker is one of the spots that was hit the least. And Dodson's a good player, so that's saying something. You lose literally your entire secondary. Tre'Davious White to the Rams. Dane Jackson, other starting corner, to the Panthers. Micah Hyde was released. I don't believe he's been signed by anybody yet. And Jordan Poyer to the Dolphins. That is your, like, you go back a year, that's your entire starting secondary. I don't know how you can look at a team. Josh Allen is fantastic. This team is still probably going to be fine. They still might push for a playoff spot. But even last year, they almost missed the playoffs. And they're playing in a division that's not going to get any easier. Yep. If Aaron Rodgers probably healthy, I think with Drake May, the Patriots are going to be better than they were last year, and they already beat them. And the Dolphins are, like, the Bills have had the Dolphins number, but the Dolphins, while they've also lost a lot of pieces, they haven't gotten as much worse as the Bills have. I don't know. I see so many people.
Like, maybe people don't want to play in Buffalo. Like maybe they don't want to play snow games every second Sunday. Like maybe there's
Yeah,
something behind that. I don't know. Like we might have to do a little bit of investigating there. Just a thought.
yeah. It's it's just crazy. I don't know. I feel like the logo on the jersey are the same, and the core structure of the team is still so good that most people will just say like they're gonna be fine. I also think they're eventually going to be fine, but to say they're not going to take a step back and be in real danger of missing the playoffs, I think it's just to miss the point for me. Like I don't know how you can lose that
I feel
much
like
and
that should
still
be the
be just the same
expectation,
old
right?
ghost.
Like
Yeah,
I feel like it'd be a crazier statement to put them in front of the Jets, which is wild because I don't I spoiler alert, I don't have them on my list, but I feel like the Jets are overrated to a certain degree just because we don't know what we're getting out of Aaron Rodgers, right? That's the biggest thing. Like to come out and say that you think the Jets are going to do this and that. I feel like making any opinion about the Jets is honestly weird at this point. I want to see Aaron Rodgers complete a drive for the first time in 2 years. That should probably be the start of things, right? So at least to me,
yeah,
I don't know with a team like I still though with all that being said, I almost feel like it's safer to put the Jets in front of the Bills. And then the Dolphins as well. I mean, you already made the point that the Bills have kind of had their number, which is fair, but the Dolphins have not lost nearly as much. They still have two great wide receivers and a quarterback. The Bills can't say the same thing, right? Like they just don't really have anybody who they it's going to be a tough year for them. Like there's you made it really I
yeah.
think the best point you could have made was just listing them. I think that pretty much put the nail in the coffin with that one. Like yeah, I don't even disagree with you. The only reason I moved them down from 2 is just because of how firmly I feel about number 1 and number 2 to a certain degree. So we can get
Yeah.
into that once.
Do you want to go to number two? Because I haven't said my number three, but I did technically give the team. So if you want to go
That's
to your number
fair.
two,
Sure, I can give my number 2. My number 2, and this one is kind of odd because it really depends on who you're talking to. It really depends on what numbers you're looking at, and it depends on a lot. I have the Bears. And the main reason
ooh,
that I have the Bears, yeah, and I know that was going to be the reaction too, is because of how highly people are looking at Caleb Williams. In any with any rookie, I get worried. I get worried whenever I hear all this stuff, all the hype around him. It's the fact that people are expecting like, and I know you're really big on Romeo Odunze. I you're for the Bears to succeed, their quarterback needs to be great right off the jump. Odunze needs to immediately jump into that role. We need to assume Keenan Allen isn't going to start showing age. Like there's so many things that just need to work out. And the rest of the core is still very similar to what we saw last season where and they play in a terrific division. There's just so many buts with this team that there's so many things that need to go right for them to succeed that I don't know. When I think about the Bears, it's just I don't necessarily like it for them. I feel like their odds of making the playoffs are so low and nobody talks about it. It's kind of the way that I look at it for them. Like they're kind of scary to me. Like just because of how young they are. We really don't know what they're going to look like this up and coming season because of how many new pieces they have. So it's new pieces to the NFL, I might add. Like it's I don't know. At least to me, I look at that team and it's just not really I think that people are maybe ranking them a little higher than they should put them. Is kind of where I'm trying to land on.
I think you've just spent too much time with me. Honestly,
You think so?
I think
Because I don't
I
think
don't
you're the only
necessarily.
person. I don't think you're the only person who's.
I don't
I
think
gave
I
the
am, but
Adunze.
I
I gave
think
the Adunze example because of you, but the rest of it I think
yeah.
is pretty on point.
I think that I've honestly been shocked about how low people are on the Bears. I'd almost
Really,
say that that yes, I think because I think there's always going to be hype with the number one overall pick. I think that sort of stuff is normal. I
it
just
just
am
there's
so
way too
thrilled
much.
with all what they've done, and I think they've done a great job about building the team first and then adding that quarterback to where I think they're going to be the Texans of this year. Like I'd be
Mm,
pretty surprised. I think it would take injury to one of those key pieces for that not to happen for me. So maybe I think I'm really high on them to where I don't really get the case for them being overrated. Because obviously with rookies there's gonna be some level of variability. There's gonna be some level of we don't know what they're gonna be. But I think with both Williams and Adunze, I think they're two of the most sure hit prospects in like the last few drafts, and they got both of them. And they also have additional talent to back that up in the receiver core in both DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, who are proven producers. And you pair that with the defense that at the end of the year rattled off like we talked about the Eagles' last like 7 games. Let me give you the last 6 for the Bears. How many of those do you think they won?
I know they went on a really good run towards the end of the year. It would have been 4 or 5 for me to have heard about that.
Yeah, it was 4.
Yeah, there you go.
It was 4, and they beat good teams. They beat Detroit. They almost beat Cleveland, only lost by a field goal.
Yeah.
And like they played a lot of good close teams really close because of that defense. And I think their offense just got so much better, and that was what was dragging them down. I don't know. I look at this Bears team and I just see there's a lot of promise. I think your best point is the division. I think that's going to make things really tough for them. So playoffs, like, I think it's going to be a coin flip in my head. I still just think they're going to be a really good team that at the end of the season, even if they don't make the playoffs, we're going to be like, whoa, that's a team to watch.
Oh, sure. And I'm not saying that. I think that they will show a lot of promise. But I feel like saying that the Texans of this season is a crazy statement to make, considering how 1 in a million that Texans team almost felt in a lot of ways. Like, I don't think anybody could have predicted that. And I think maybe it's the recency bias that people are just instantly willing to say that, yeah, it's going to happen again because of how sure these prospects are. I have such a hard time saying that because of the fact that I don't know, man. I think half the reason the Bears are as hyped as they are is because of the Texans, because of how good the Texans were last year. I think that raised the standard on how good a really, really good rookie quarterback should be. I feel like, I don't know. I have a really, really, it's weird for me. That's kind of what I mean. I think maybe the hype is coming from that a little bit, but I don't know. I'll let you say your number 2.
Let me just finish up one last thing, because I think that's a good point you make. Because I do think, yes, the Texans season was 1 in a million, and you're very much right to say that. I also think that the Bears have a much better roster around Caleb Williams than the Texans did around CJ Stroud. So I think to have a Texans similar season, I don't even think Caleb Williams has to play up to the insane level that CJ Stroud did. I think even if he's 75% of that, I think we have similar results.
I do agree with you. I think, you know what, maybe a lot of where I'm saying about like the overhype is more aimed at Caleb Williams then, just because of the fact that like people are expecting him to come out and be Stroud. And I think that's nuts. Especially with the records that Stroud broke. I don't think I feel like it's controversial to say that I don't think that Caleb Williams is going to be as good as Stroud was in his first season. I just think that I think there are people who think that Caleb Williams is going to come out and be the best rookie quarterback of all time just because. And I think that's I don't know. I'm not going to believe it until I see it. Is kind of where I land on it, I guess.
It is a big stretch, but Caleb Williams, I think most people would agree, is a better prospect coming out of college than CJ Stroud was. And I think that's where the hype comes in. I do agree with you, though, that it's very hard to live up to that season. I am realizing that this is actually a very good... Oh, I have to do my number 3 team. Never mind.
Are you doing your... well, how do you want to do this? We kind of jumped all over the place.
Yeah, we're jumping all over the place.
Who cares?
I'm doing my number 2 team because it's just such a better segue. My number 2 team is the Houston Texans.
Caleb, do you want to know what my number 1 is?
Is it the Texans?
It is the Texans.
Okay, so we're on the same board there. Yeah. And again, this is another one where I have to I like the Texans. I like all that they did in the offseason, but it's just
people are acting like CJ Stroud is gonna pull some Tom Brady shit and win the Super Bowl in his second year. Like it is bonkers the stuff people are saying about the Texans. Sorry, I'll let you take it now. But It is
Yeah, no,
ridiculous.
I completely agree. It is ridiculous, and I just think because people really do ride on the whole like winners of the offseason thing, where like everybody kind of hitches. It happened to the Browns a few years ago, where I just remember everybody being like so certain that the Browns were going to be the next big
Yep,
thing.
I remember that.
Um, and
Because
and
they
I
got,
remember this was back.
I don't even what they got Odell. I think Odell was the big reason behind that.
Yeah, yeah, it was around that time where they actually made lots of moves that were good on paper, and you look at it and you're just like, oh yeah, this is the team. And then they go out and they have a mediocre season.
Yep.
This was the time where I was running my Seahawks fan page on Instagram, and I remember
Oh
getting
yeah.
like bullied for saying the Seahawks would beat the Browns, and they came out and did it, and it was like people at by the
People shut
time it
up.
happened, people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and I'm like, I endured like
Oh
so
sure.
many fucking like hate
Yeah. No,
comments.
that's how it is.
But that kind of I feel like that happens every year where we just kind of like get sucked into the hype on a team,
Yep.
and anything less than like at this point being like the near the top of the AFC is like, oh my god, like this is a Texans team that did like lose to the Panthers. Like I don't know if we're forgetting about that. Um, they almost didn't make the playoffs. There's still a team in transition, and I think they're going to be a better team than they were last year. But I think immediately coming out and saying they're going to challenge like the Chiefs, or even like I know they're on this list, but like the Ravens,
Yep.
immediately going to challenge those teams for some of the tough spots. I think that's going to be another year or two.
Yep.
I think you're going to have to continue to make this offense gel together. And I think when you have so many new additions, especially with guys like Stephon Diggs who um, have had like some kind of off the field concerns. Same thing with Joe Mixon.
Yep.
It
Right.
will take a little while to mesh. Um, and I don't know. I just think it's going to. I think people's expectations are just so astronomically high that they're taking a team that I think is going to be really, really good and elevating them to something that's just like unsustainable.
They can't match. Like, because I agree with everything you just said. It was basically the same points that I had for having them. One, I they're gonna be good. They're gonna be good. They're a playoff team. Obviously, they're gonna be good. If they make it to the second round of the playoffs, I feel like that would not be an unfair expectation for them. But it's almost like the entire world would be disappointed in that, and it's really
Yeah.
weird to see. Like it's they have no
Mhm.
place fighting for the Super Bowl. You got to realize that players like I made the Tom Brady example. I don't even like players like that only come around every once in a while. This generation already has it. They have their Patrick Mahomes. I don't like CJ Stroud is great. He is a great quarterback. This team across the board is great. Am I expecting them to basically win the Super Bowl in their second year with this kind of regime, is the word I'll use? No. Nobody should expect that. This is kind of their like if last year was their first like real run with this kind of squad, this season is like your let's see what we have. Maybe the year after this one is when I'm starting to go, okay, Super Bowl. Super Bowl is what I want. This season, I think you got it. You can't be putting it all in now. Like that's too much. Like it would be insane to think that Houston would be winning a Super Bowl at the end of this year. Like they're great. CJ Stroud is great. All of the additions they've made are great, but it's just you got to give them at least one more year after this, right? Like their window is nowhere close to ending. And with all of the insane teams across the board, in the AFC as well, it's just I don't know. It's going to be a tough year for them to do it, and I don't think that they necessarily are in as big of a rush as a lot of these other AFC teams are in. So I think they'll be good. I don't think they'll be as good as a lot of people think they'll be.
Yeah.
And I think I'm done.
I completely.
I think you got to give your
Yeah.
1 and 3.
Yeah, you are. I already gave my one because the Bills were my
Oh, right.
one.
Yep. Yep.
So I only have to give one left. I completely agree with everything you said about the Texans. That's why I had them two. Like
Yeah.
we're pretty in sync on that one. This is a team, my number
Well,
3 team.
and think
So
about it
again,
like this. Originally, I had the Bills number 2 before I flipped them for the Bears. So it's
Oh, there we go.
yeah. So we were pretty much on the same page before the segment
I
started.
think Texans and Bills we're pretty in sync on.
Yeah.
So again, my list currently, I flipped the Ravens and Eagles, and again, I think my Ravens pick. I'm much more confident about the top 4. I think there's a big gap for me between the top 4
Yeah.
and then the Ravens. I think the Ravens, I've just kind of like, if I'm doing a thing, I put a tiny little warning sticker on the Ravens, like warning may have 3 less wins than last year.
Yeah.
Whereas like the rest of the teams, I'm kind of like, okay, this is.
I think the
have
Ravens
genuine
one is.
concern.
I think if I had thought of that, I would have thrown them on my list because I think that's actually a really
Yeah.
good one, just because of what we saw with them. But I'll let you take it away. What's your third?
Yeah, so I have Ravens 5, Eagles 4, Texans 2, Bills 1. My team at 3. I originally had them at 1, but then I realized I'm a Seahawks fan and I should stop being biased. Is the Rams, and I will start by saying that they proved me deadly wrong last year in being good when I thought they were going to be utterly terrible.
I don't
And
think I had
props to
them very
on
highly
that.
rated either.
And-
So
No, I think I remember in our season predictions we had them kind of deadlocking with the Cardinals for
yeah.
last place in the division, and they proved us wrong, and they had a really good season. And I don't think they're going to go back to that, but I just think some regression is pretty inevitable, and I think that all starts with losing Aaron Donald. I don't know how it
That's a
can,
good point.
because I think you lose Aaron Donald and you lose so much. As a Seahawks fan, having to watch Aaron Donald lay the bloodied corpse of Russell Wilson on a football field every Sunday for like 6 or 7 years, like I know how absolutely terrifying he was to play against. He made that defense. They don't necessarily have the strongest secondary or the strongest linebacker play. When they had Aaron Donald, it didn't matter because their receivers aren't going to be even able to get open that deep because Aaron Donald's already in the backfield.
It feels like people have kind of
that,
already forgotten that Aaron Donald retired.
Yeah.
Which is nuts because he is probably the most dominant
deal.
player we have seen in not even on just the defensive side of the ball, on both sides. Like I can't think of a
he is a
player
generational talent.
Oh, absolutely, and he's not treated like that at all. Like the stats he was able to put up and the fear he produced. Like it's people talk about like Lawrence Taylor, and you always hear all the stories of like that. I think 10 years down the road, people are going to be talking about Aaron Donald in the same way. Like, and it's pretty weird because I don't think people think about him like that. And I think it's just the recency thing. Like, I think that people just, I think once he's actually gone and we get to that first week and the Rams don't have that presence on that side of the ball, I think that's when we're gonna start to hear all those stories. Oh, I remember when they had that Aaron Donald guy. Like it's gonna kind of hit that type thing, right? So in that sense, I do agree with you. I think the fact that the Rams are even anywhere near that sort of argument of being, are they being called good? I don't know, but
yeah, there's so I think this was kind of sparked by the podcast I listened to today where it was Mina Kimes' podcast, and Mina Kimes is great.
Right. Yeah.
And she is a Seahawks fan, so I was like
betrayal.
Yeah, the Rams offense is the number 2 in the league, and they're just so talking about how great the Rams are. And I just feel like all of the NFL media just kind of like blows smoke up the Rams' asses because all of the NFL media is in LA, so it's all so close, and they can walk over to SoFi Stadium and watch the Rams play. And it's
probably
like,
have tea with Matthew Stafford's wife. Like it's
yeah, exactly. All of our kids are Rams fans because they're growing up in LA. You know, that kind of thing. Like I just think they get so much benefit of the doubt.
Are we looking at like the same offense? Like
yeah, I know.
What? Stafford, Williams, Kupp,
Nakua. After that take.
That's a wild take. Like, I'm not trying to come at it. I don't even remember her name off the top of my head. I know who you're talking about. I've seen her on Twitter before, but like, I don't necessarily watch any of her stuff. I'm not trying to come at her in any way. That is a wild take. That is a bonkers take. Like, I could probably list. I am not that big of an NFL guy. I think I can make that statement. Like, especially it just happens that like the NFL season is right when I end up working the most. Usually like that fall and early like winter is when I am very, very busy. So I don't end up getting to watch a lot of NFL, but even I can sit there and go, what the hell do you mean? Like, that is a crazy statement. I can't even like find a reason you'd say that. Like they don't have that. Stafford's great, but he's not a top tier quarterback anymore. And he also, sure, that wide receiver room's great. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. Like Williams was good
also very
last year,
it's
but
also a very injury prone room
that's
on the
a
offense.
very good
Now
point.
that's
True.
not something you can necessarily hold against them talent wise, but Matthew Stafford, well, I think he's very talented.
Yes.
And I think
yeah,
he's
sure.
better than a lot of people think. He's obviously old, and
Would you say he's good enough to quarterback a number 2 offense? Like even if he had the pieces.
No, well, I think healthy maybe, but I think that is something you have to consider. Where part of the reason they were so terrible 2 years ago was because Matthew Stafford was hurt and not playing up to his full potential. And I think the chances that happens again are decently high. You look at Cooper Kupp, who was injured for a lot of last year. You look at even Puka Nacua, who obviously, like, again, I want to preface that like we're not hoping for any injuries or anything, but just saying that it's a certain possibility. When you see it at this point through players' careers, one of the reasons Puka Nacua fell to the 5th round was because of injury concerns. So I think you have to look at that and say, like, man, if they get, unless they get every break right with that, I'm kind of worried about them. You also, just going back to the Aaron Donald point, a couple more points I want to make on that front, because I think you're absolutely right. I do think people have kind of like come around to say like, oh yeah, absolutely, he's a generational player. I just don't think people have kind of applied it to the Rams yet to realize. I think people are going to be more shocked to see how much worse they get when he leaves. One of the big reasons again that they weren't very good in 2022 is because Aaron Donald was injured for about like 6 games. And when you lose that presence, you lose a lot of games. Like, that's the fewest games he's played in his entire career. And yeah, no wonder they weren't doing very good at that point. I think you also look at a guy like Kobe Turner, who,
is filling
I know
some of big shoes.
Yeah, and some of the stats were saying like, oh yeah, he's still got a lot of double teams. He's still played really well, and I'm sure he's going to be a great player still. But I don't see how your stats can't decrease. I don't see how you have a more disappointing sophomore season when you're not playing with Aaron Donald anymore. So, I don't know. I know that I'm biased. I know I'm a Seahawks fan. I'm going to hate the Rams on principle. But I just think I've heard so much talk about the Rams and how they're just like assumed to be a playoff team again, assumed to be this like great team that's only going to continue to improve. I think their window is already closing, and it's closing fast. And there's so many signs of that to me. Again, I don't think they'll be bad next year. I just think, particularly in the NFL media world, they get a lot of smoke blowing up their ass that they really don't deserve.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. I think that it is a good point to make. I'm sure Kobe Turner will be great. I'm sure he'll be a great player. He will never be Aaron Donald. Not in a million years. I would bet the house that Kobe Turner is not going to be. I will jump in the ocean if Kobe Turner ends up being as good of a player as Aaron Donald, because it's just it's ridiculous shoes to fill. It's like, imagine playing on the 2000 Rangers and you're like, you young prospect, you are our new Wayne Gretzky. It's just like, well, great. No, that's great. I'm actually good. I actually would rather go back to my tiny Ontario hometown and just, do nothing. That, if as a preference, like, it's crazy shoes to fill, no matter how good of a player you are, right? Like, it's not a situation you necessarily want to be in. But anyway, after 50 minutes, we can now say we have done our... Yeah, no, this is a long one. Real long one. Our top 5 most overrated players, or not players, teams. We could do players. Maybe that's next week.
Come back for next week.
Come back for next week so you can hate on us more. But feel free to drop all the dislikes in the comments. Make sure to threaten. If you're going to threaten my death. Make sure to get my address right. And all of that fun stuff.
Gonna dox yourself, Simon?
Not really.
Put
but,
it on the screen.
Put it on the screen. Put it on the screen. Yeah, Simon's address at this location. In fact, I will be here at this time, at this day. Make sure to come meet me. Yeah. Great. There we go. Subscribe.
Thank you, everybody, for watching this week. If you enjoyed, if you aren't angry at us at this point, or if you are and want to be more angry, make sure to check us out on, this is my new thing, I like boards. Make sure to check us out on Twitter, YouTube,
all of those places.
Instagram,
look at those,
TikTok,
yeah,
Apple Podcasts.
He's checking it off like Spotify, a list.
Trick Play Podcast. You should follow us there. The audio listeners are really missing out because there's so much going on right now.
It's funny because I've had that thought before, that I feel like I sometimes feel bad for the audio listeners for all the bullshit that we sometimes pull. Like I feel like they really are missing out. Not that any bullshit necessarily like comes to mind in this moment of like things that we could possibly be pulling, but I don't know. Like just
it's like, I mean, right now, like the whiteboard was pretty crazy. But
that was pretty crazy.
I guess the audio listeners are okay now.
That's true.
But yeah, we do generally pull some stuff.
Yeah,
we have a couple problems.
Yeah, we pull some stuff out every once in a while, including having some like guests occasionally appearing in the background and stuff like that. Like it's a fun time over on the YouTube, but yeah.
That's why you should check us out.
Yeah, you absolutely should.
Yeah. My first shout out. I think this is going to come as a surprise. I don't know if it will or not. So just based on the quick math. So Simon, you normally take about 2 days to get these podcast episodes out, right? So it'll come out on probably Saturday. Barring...
I'm doing a lot of traveling in the next 2 days, so it might be interesting, but it should come out Saturday.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. The audio podcast will for sure come out Saturday.
Okay. So there we've got something. That day will mark the 1 year anniversary of the Trick Play podcast.
Oh fuck! I forgot about that. Oh, I'm sorry, Caleb. I forgot about our anniversary.
You didn't even.
You know what's fuck? You know what's okay? I'm gonna jump in and just say this. I like a week ago had the thought in my head of like, oh shit! Like I actually looked at it. I looked it up. I like saw when it was, and I was like, I should probably text Caleb and see like because we can come up with something. Like maybe I was at the time I was thinking we'll come up with like maybe we can watch like a compilation, like we can come up with something. No, completely fucking forgot. Yeah, no gift was involved. This is great. No, our
we forgot our anniversary, Simon.
Wow.
Our relationship's on the rocks.
Wow. Shucks.
Anyways, though, I'm giving us a shout out for 1 year. I think it's pretty cool. We've kept it consistent. I think we've gotten way better since that first episode. Since Kyle Trask.
It is hard to watch that first episode. Shout out to any. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna shout out as I do have another shout out, but I will say instead as a shout out to everybody to our day oneers. I don't think there's many of them, but shout out to our day oneers who somehow pulled through that first episode. Wow. I don't know how. Like I remember looking back after that first day, I was proud of that first episode. I don't know if I'm proud of it anymore. It is not the best thing we have ever made, and that's okay.
I missed the U-Haul boxes. Bring back the U-Haul boxes.
I will say I've had quite the difference in like a background as a whole. Like I've had a lot of like scene changes in the last little bit.
Well, I have too, because you've had the scene changes in the last like couple months.
That's true.
I had the scene changes in like January to March, where I was in like a different like basement dungeon every week.
It's funny. It's funny. You know what? It's more funny when you think about the fact that like the timing of it all, I think, is the way that I'll put it. Because when I'm finally probably going to start like settling down a bit, it's going to be consistent of me back at my good old desk with my Luke Combs albums behind me and all that fun stuff, is probably when you're going to be back all over the place. Well, we'll see.
Okay. I should have more stability. It should be okay. It should be okay.
Well, that's good at
I
least.
won't be. I'll be on campus, so I won't have to like run into a library whenever I have to stay late on campus. So
Oh, well, there you go.
I think we'll be chilling.
Yeah, you won't have to like do it in front of like an audience.
Yeah, in front of the lecture theater.
I did have the thought if trick play ever did take off, and that continued to be like a thing that's happened, at some point you would have to do a live trick play show. But like just for the comedy of it, make it like so nobody can hear me, so it's just you talking. So there'd just be like 5-minute long sections of just silence. Now that
like
that would
my
be
head at the camera.
yeah, exactly. Now that would be entertainment right there. You know what? Maybe
that should be our one.
I have
That should be our 1-year anniversary special. Is we pick out like this episode. For half of the segments, I'm on mute, and then the other half you're on mute, and we just let people figure it out.
Oh, the funny thing is that with some of the poor editing or poor like not editing, the audio issues we've had over the last year, we haven't even been far off from that. It is incredible. I will say the one thing that I think is insane, how close we got to 50 episodes in a year. That's the impressive thing to me.
Yeah.
Because we got, I think this is either 46 or 47, which is pretty nuts. Like we missed a few, I think it would have been February. I think was when we were missing a few. I think if we hadn't missed those, we would have hit 50, which is crazy to think about. Because I think, how many weeks would we even have missed? It would have been only like 4 or 5. Would have been my guess, which is a pretty fucking good record, honestly.
Yep.
Like that is pretty impressive that we were able to do that. So yeah, no, I think this is the 1 week where we're allowed to pat ourselves on the back, which is really funny that this was the week I decided to debut nothing, my new setup. What do you guys think? I might stick around, might hang out up here for a little while. Yeah.
Are we acknowledging
the
elephant in the room?
Yeah. Well, my shout out was gonna be it. I have a green screen now. So yeah, there you go. That's the shout out. Although, you know what? Actually, you want my shout out? Caleb, I did hide this a little bit. I will hype it up first. So, what this was supposed to be. This is going to have to go through some significant changes. And I will run the intro for it. Just to show that there was legitimate effort put into this for at least half a second. I showed this to my girlfriend because there needs to be a few things. I'm trying to figure out the best order to explain this. I was very sick. I had strep throat when I was doing this. So I was literally sitting on the couch with nothing better to do. And I was like, oh yeah, I did get that green screen. Why don't I go way too much into it and like try and develop like the craziest segment possible? Like, what is the dumbest, like, because obviously what we have here, it's no slouch. We have a pretty good setup here, but it's not very overly produced. There's not a lot of editing over top of it. I was like, what is like the most stupid thing that I could possibly get? What is the closest I could possibly get to Jimmy Kimmel on this show? So ladies and gentlemen, this will not be debuting next week because I didn't finish it, and it's going to be really funny because I'm going to go over to the scene and it'll play the intro and it'll probably just be a black screen. I don't even know if this is going to be funny because I'm doing it all through OBS and you might not even hear it. But ladies and gentlemen, this is the thing that my girlfriend told me that I shouldn't put online because she would be embarrassed of. Ladies and gentlemen, Simon's Big Board. Oh, fuck, I'm not playing it. There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Here. It's time for Simon's Big Board.
Wait.
Yeah. I don't know if the audio played for anybody. I actually have no clue. Were you able to hear it?
I didn't hear it.
That's the audio is the bad part. I had this all planned out, by the way. I was not going to explain a lick to you, and my plan was at some point in the segment, in the same way that ESPN does it, where they'll be like talking about a certain thing, and they'll be like, you know what? That's a great point. And then Ernie will walk up to the big board. I was trying to kind of do that with it, where I was just going to wait for a chance on a certain segment where it's like, Caleb, that's a really good point, and then run the intro. And it would just be like the intro to that, and then it would just be me standing in front of this giant big board. That was my whole plan. Because this all branched off of the fact that I was very sick in the head, and I had 2 cameras and a green screen, and I was like, what can I do with all of these things? So yeah. There you go. There's my other shout out. Coming to you never, Simon's Big Board. Because I will be coming up with something.
You should have done it. You should have done it.
I would have done it. You know what's the funny thing? I would have gone through with it if this second camera was better. Because it didn't register the green screen at all. That was the issue. Because this camera's ability to like recognize colors is very weird. Where it's a perfectly fine camera. It's the camera I used for the first 44 episodes of the podcast. So it's a very fine camera. Very good camera. But it is not good enough for a green screen. That is the lesson I learned. This new fancy ass 1080p camera, great for a green screen. Not that I know anything about that though.
No,
never. So make sure to subscribe and do all the things that Caleb said on that one checklist that one time. Oh, and I will add on, before I got the green screen, I was going to get a whiteboard. That was my other idea. Just to like, I wanted to...
Covered.
Yeah, I wanted to find... No, but I mean like, I wanted a decently big whiteboard, and I wanted to find a way where I can get like a camera to follow me. So like I'd go, that's a great idea, Cam.
Roll it into frame.
Yeah, no. Like I want you to imagine this, where I go like, that's a great idea, Caleb. And then I'd stand up and the camera would follow me to like a different corner of the room where I just have this giant whiteboard. And for context, my girlfriend is an artist. I was going to get her to like try and make it all like fancy and shit. Like all the writing on it would have been done by her because my handwriting looks like it was done by a grade 2er. Like I had it all planned out. I had multiple options. This is what happens when I get sick. I just work. I do more work to like try and come up with like, what is the stupidest way that I can spend my time right now? Not the best way I could have been spending it, to be honest with you. I could have been like, I don't know, becoming the son of like some NBA superstars. Like I could have done something like that, right? But instead I decided to do that entire fucking thing. So there you go. But also, Caleb, to add why the intro, the sound was necessary, and I do hope it was playing for everybody out there. I don't know if it was. I couldn't tell. But I also, just to make it worse, after my girlfriend said that, auto-tuned it so I sound like a chipmunk. So it was like like my voice, like doing like the Alvin the Chipmunk voice, going, "Ladies and gentlemen, Simon's Big Board," and like that whole thing. It was fucking great. It shows where my sense of embarrassment is with all of this stuff. I was more than willing to go completely ruin any sort of serious career I could possibly had with the introduction of Simon's Big Board. But there you go.
Simon's Big Board, debuting June 29th. That's next week, folks. Make sure to tune in.
There you go. Except
people want to see it.
People want to see it? Yeah. I honestly, I won't be doing it now, though, because it's not as funny. It would have been a lot funnier if you didn't see it coming, because it would have been, Caleb, you need to understand the amount of levels I was willing to take this. It would have been new graphics. It would have been new transitions. I would have had music in the background. I had it already. Like I was thinking about buying like an actual soundtrack that would have been like as close to a game show soundtrack. This is what I do when I'm sick. I just do stupid shit. It's a good thing I don't get sick as much anymore, because I just go, this is what I do when I'm bored. I'm just like, what? My first thought...
Simon just has the Michael Jordan flu game every time he gets sick.
The Jordan flu game, but for like coming up with new segment ideas.
Podcasting.
Apparently. Yeah, but
Simon
for podcasting.
Podcasters.
Put that on a damn graphic. Thanks everybody for watching. Subscribe everywhere. Thanks for Jason Tatum for holding me up in the air like this. I feel like I can fly.
And remember, kids,
And remember,
if you're ever being held up in the arms of your NBA champion father,
it's very true. It's
remember
important to
one thing.
that. Remember it.
Penix better have a warm ass. See you next week.